Story 1. A playroom 3 times the size of my bedroom filled with many expensive toys, a television, beanbag chairs, an Xbox console, a mini refrigerator full of snacks just for her, and a small trampoline. She was always willing to share everything she owned. She truly was the definition of spoiled but not rotten. Story 2. Looking back, I realized the friends I considered wealthy when I was a child were not actually wealthy. I was just poorer. Story 3. Getting a whole new wardrobe of clothes at the start of every school year, sometimes after Christmas too. I was lucky to get a new pair of shoes each year. Story 4. The thing that actually surprised me was that my wealthy friends didn't realize they were wealthy. They were genuinely in such a bubble during most of their teenage years that they had no idea how fortunate they were financially. You might think that everyone's family has a $1 million beachfront house, owns 7 cars, and doesn't have to worry about paying for college tuition. Sorry, that's not normal for most people. They were astonished when I told them they were actually the wealthy kids. Story 5. A basement den, like one of those big ones with the bar, the Lego wall, the pinball machine, the poker table, and the huge television. Enough seating for a dozen men. The place was so cool. I would just sleep on those couches. Story 6. An indoor pool in a house by the sea and a very expensive computer in his room, which was next to his own bedroom with a private bathroom. A really cool person, though. We have been friends for 25 years. Story 7. A moat around her house. Her family was and is awesome. They worked very hard for what they had. At one point, her parents let me add freshwater fish to the moat. Story 8. What comes to my mind is quality time with parents. Not just vacations around the world, but parents not working, picking up from school, or going to every field trip. Or just always being around. Story 9. The ability to buy groceries without adding them up before checking out allows customers to put anything they want from the store into their shopping cart and pay for it without any problem. Story 10. A fully finished basement his parents never used. Essentially, a house underneath a house since both were fully furnished. In the time we were friends, I think I was only upstairs about 3 times. They were so rich they had a house so big it was like 2 houses. Couldn't believe it. He lived in the basement basically as a separate tenant, and whenever I came over, it was always just us in the basement, like having a friend with his own apartment or something. Story 11. Just about all the Star Wars characters and the Jawa carrier. Doctor's kid. Note, however, that he died in a car accident a few years later. Awful. Story 12. Bro, I went to my friend's house and his mother was like, "Hey, you kids want to go out to eat?" My thought was McDonald's, but when we pulled up to Red Lobster, I almost freaked out. I got anxious because I thought I had to dress up, even though they weren't. Story 13. I do not know if she was wealthy per se, but she was well off. Everyone in her family was a doctor for the most part. What impressed me most about her was how she was always presentable. Her eyes were lined. She always smelled clean and pleasant. And her nails were very clean with natural nail tips that were almost white. Her husband's Mercedes had a pleasant spice scent. It was spotless. And the air system was very pure. She also learned English very quickly and knew many languages. This may be unique to her rather than a characteristic of wealthy people, but I have incorporated many of these habits into my daily life. Story 14. Clothes in the closet with tags still on them. My sister and I always thought this was the biggest sign of wealth. We had so few clothes that an outfit did not have time to hit the closet with tags still on it. Story 15. A pool house connected to their home. 2 stories, lofts at both ends, saltwater hot tub, and heated pool. Every game system available, darts and billiards. They said it was cheaper than going on vacation every year. Story 16. I grew up in a poor neighborhood but went to a wealthy high school because of how everything was zoned. Almost everyone else received new cars or vacations for graduation gifts. My mother baked me cookies. To be honest, I feel like I got the best gift. Story 17. A mansion. When I saw where my friend of 11 years lived, it changed my entire perspective on wealth. Like, what? You go home to this? Story 18. Grew up poor in the Rust Belt. No one was rich in the 1960s. When I got to college, I had to ask my roommate how to use an automatic washer and dryer because I had never seen one. We only had a wringer washer and no dryer. I never knew anyone with an automatic washer and dryer. Story 19. I had a wealthy friend with a large house in an upscale neighborhood. The first time I stayed for dinner, they served hot dogs on regular sliced bread. Story 20. Being picked up by helicopter from school. It landed on the sports ground, and the whole school watched him get in. Story 21. A cash drawer with about $1,000 in loose cash. This drawer is refilled regularly, and anyone in the family can take money from it anytime they want. Story 22. Turns out my friend was not rich. They just did not spend all of their money. They owned a house with hardwood floors, and I found that very surprising. Story 23. A friend I met during university. I knew he was rich instantly when we first got to know each other, and I asked, "Why did you join the course?" He replied, "I didn't need to. I just got bored and thought, why not?" By the way, he was way too smart for the course and got a first-class degree, the university's top marks in the United Kingdom. Also, when he mentioned my father owns many industrial buildings, it was another hint. Then, his father got him a brand new 2019 Porsche for his birthday. Story 24. Not a friend, more of an acquaintance, who flew from the United States to Greece for a 3-day weekend. "Did you see the Acropolis?" I asked eagerly since I was a big mythology and ancient history enthusiast. "No." She went shopping. Story 25. Parents who could buy him things instead of waiting for birthdays and Christmas. I literally thought all kids only got toys or new clothes twice, maybe 3 times a year until I was about 10. Story 26. One had lots of Breyer horses and accessories, and another had Samantha, the American Girl doll, with virtually all her clothes and accessories. This was in the late 1980s. Story 27. Dad, an orthodontist, bought him a Nissan 280Z when he turned 16. He flipped it and totaled it, so Dad bought him a Porsche 944. Story 28. 3 expensive horses at a top-level show barn at the same time. Nobody needs that kind of money. Her family spent over $10,000 a month just on that. Story 29. We were not rich, but we were probably the richest in the neighborhood, and that was me. We had an in-ground pool and a big yard. I always had the latest toys. I had the latest gaming system, and if you were my friend, we had a lake house that we visited many weekends. Story 30. I grew up poor, and going to a friend's house that was warm made me feel like his family was wealthy. Taking off your coat indoors seemed like a luxury. Story 31. Not exactly a rich thing, more just my parents keeping their old cars in good condition. But when I saw automatic windows, that was the peak of technology. I was convinced day trips to the moon and androids that do everything for us were right around the corner. Story 32. A dedicated Lego room. We were in first grade in the very early 1990s, and he had an entire room with multiple building tables and every set you could think of. Story 33. Totally unrelated, but I grew up thinking my school had wealthy children. I did not realize until adulthood that it was simply because those children had 2 parents who worked, while we were poor. Story 34. Lived in Las Vegas during the 1980s and was poor but had a friend in school who was wealthy. He had an arcade room and an entire refrigerator dedicated to Yoo-Hoo, Capri Sun, and Gatorade in glass jars. Story 35. I am from Germany. In Europe, there are many castles and they are owned by people. The family of a childhood friend owns the local castle. Story 36. He had every gaming console and more than 100 games for each one. His bedroom was larger than half of my house. The walls were lined with bookshelves, but they held video games instead of books. Story 37. We had family friends with 2 children. Each child had a Nintendo Entertainment System and a television in their bedroom, as well as copies of the same games. This was around 1986 or 1987. Story 38. A putting green and sauna in his basement, around the corner from a mini theater. I did not even grow up in a super wealthy area. Story 39. A bridge from their main house to the room above the garage where they lived was like an upstairs hallway between 2 buildings. The garage was massive and the house was massive. I only went once, but I will never forget it. Story 40. A refrigerator with a water dispenser. That was next level, like you probably replaced a working refrigerator to buy that one. Story 41. I knew a person in high school whose family practically had a duplicate of everything they owned in storage to replace as needed. Story 42. He had every Star Wars Lego set available at the time. He even had 2 of the $600 Millennium Falcon sets in his room. He was about 12 years old. Story 43. Warm bed, extra room that was just for the office instead of live-in boyfriend's crack and hooker den. Sautéed mushrooms at dinner sometimes. Story 44. Big game room with a pool table and a bar featuring 2 to 3 sodas on tap. State senator limousine with a radiophone that dad let them take to the drive-in movies. Died from cancer within 90 days of diagnosis in their early 50s. Story 45. My friend's parents had his or her bathrooms. That's right, bathrooms, not sinks. Their bedroom had 2 entire bathrooms. You walked into their bedroom through double doors, and then there was a bathroom on each side. Story 46. Ice machine, trash compactor, BMW for first car at age 15, a live-in housekeeper, fully finished and furnished basement, all of the cable channels plus movie channels, TV in his room. This was the 1980s. Story 47. They could just open the cupboard or fridge and take something to eat or drink. The fact that their parents did not care and the snacks were just there was amazing. Story 48. Cable television from a satellite dish, approximately 15 feet in diameter, and a tube television with a screen about 3 feet wide. Story 49. Not only did his family have a computer, but he even had his own computer inside his bedroom. Absolutely wild. Story 50. His dad was making deals in the backyard gazebo, which we were not allowed to ask about, next to his private man-made lake and golf course. Story 51. My parents spent all their extra money and then some on Catholic school. We were lower middle class, but I felt poor because all my friends had indoor pools, movie theaters, and entire rooms with white carpet and couches that no one was allowed to use. Story 52. When I was in middle school, I joined the choir because it was one of the few extracurricular activities available. A classmate's wealthy parents had the choir come sing for a Christmas party. Their house had a double staircase going upstairs. I think their front foyer was about 400 square feet. They had 20 Christmas trees spread throughout the house. Story 53. Her family had a restaurant and hotel, so whenever she wanted to eat something, she would call the kitchen staff, order for me and her, including desserts and whatever we wanted. Then one of the kitchen staff would bring the food to their house. They were not living in the hotel. They had an extension of the house or something similar. Story 54. Castle Grayskull from He-Man. I wanted one so badly but never got it. My friend received it for Christmas one year and basically destroyed it like he did with all his cool things because he never appreciated them. Story 55. Not a thing, but I remember he thought the only reason we had not replaced my Xbox from a couple of Christmases ago was being lazy. He could not understand not wanting to spend money on a new one since the current one worked perfectly. He thought my parents were making excuses not to have to stop and pick one up. Story 56. A pantry full of food that they have unrestricted access to. I could not fathom that. We are not allowed to open our refrigerator, let alone the pantry. Story 57. River house with 4 different boats. 1 jet boat and 3 power boats of various sizes, with the largest valued at over $500,000. Story 58. A brand new sports car at 15 years of age. He had his permit and drove it to my house on Christmas Day. It was his Christmas gift. I know he was very excited and I was truly happy for him, but years later I wonder what my father was thinking watching my friend receive a brand new sports car while I maybe got some shirts and socks. Story 59. Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles toys. He had the Turtle Blimp, the April action figure, and Krang. Story 60. He lived in a 2-story house, and he had his own room and bathroom. Their kitchen was on an upper level with large windows overlooking our street, and the television they had in the kitchen was larger than the one in our living room. Coming from a small 2-bedroom home with 6 people, this was a truly mind-blowing experience. Story 61. a job from age 12 in his father's construction business. He was expected to work and earn his own money from a young age. Story 62. I thought my best friend was rich because he had boxed cereal and Ninja Turtles. It did not even dawn on me until I was an adult that I had been to their home multiple times without electricity due to unpaid bills. To me, who was below the poverty line, that was a mansion. Story 63. Second house. Lake Tahoe. 1990s. Cool high school friend. Nice family. Didn't seem mind-blowing. Fun summertime. Story 64. He had a pinball machine and a theater room. I was friends with him from school, but I did not realize how well off he was until I went to his house one time. I hope that guy is doing well. Story 65. They moved into a mansion after winning the 16 million United States dollars lottery. They had a game room with arcade games. She had her own telephone line in her bedroom. Her brother got a car with a computer screen in it, and they also had an in-ground pool. They had a grand piano in the foyer. This was in the 1980s. Story 66. A friend I met when I was 19, who is still my friend, has a credit card with a £25,000 limit per month to use for whatever he wants. His 3 sisters have the same thing. It is unbelievable to me. He is a genuinely nice guy, though, and is not pompous or stuck up at all. Story 67. I was not really a friend, but a girl I went to school with had access to a computer with a word processor, a printer, and very fancy paper in first grade back in 1992. Story 68. He was not super rich per se, but there was a hot tub and an in-ground pool at his house. Seeing that at a house for the first time blew my mind. Story 69. Being a teenager in the early 2000s, it was mind-blowing when kids had their own computer in their room. Story 70. Really nice parents, while he and his brother were both unpleasant. In retrospect, it makes a bit more sense. Story 71. Big screen television. One of those very old square ones that have the little ridges on the screen. Thinking back now, I probably saw it as a huge monster of a television, but if it was bigger than about 40 inches, I would be shocked. Story 72. A complete set of the Hardy Boys mystery books. Not even as presents. His parents just bought the set for him. He would rent them to me for 25 cents a day. That's how I learned to read fast. I had 3 books of my own. Story 73. When I first saw my friend dispensing ice from his refrigerator door as a kid, it shattered my mind. Decades later, I now have an ice dispenser. I did not realize how much I was missing out on. I cannot go back. Story 74. A small train you could sit on to go around the grounds, or what we called the backyard. Story 75. Had a crazy fountain with 2 mini canals. I never saw it operational because the city would not grant a permit due to drowning risk for small children. Story 76. It is 1971 and my friend's mom got a microwave. It was about 8 to 10 years later before we could afford one. Story 77. My son's wealthy friend in elementary school hired a couple of New York Knicks players to play basketball at a 9th birthday party. Story 78. The house was 2 normal stories tall, not abnormal at all. It was an above-average house but not extravagant. The entire basement was fully furnished and carpeted. He had a modified original Xbox with every single game ever made. There was air hockey, a small basketball arcade machine, multiple projector TVs from when they were popular, a fridge for snacks and drinks, and giant beanbag chairs. He did not know he was rich. They also had their own personal motocross track. Story 79. A second house on a prominent lake that was larger and nicer than my only house, equipped with multiple boats and jet skis. Both boats were individually worth more than both of my parents' vehicles combined. Story 80. Not really growing up, but as a young man, I went on a couple of dates with a girl. Her parents had their house built in a gated community with an elevator shaft. It was for when they got old and retired, so it could be installed. There was also a small movie room and a new version of those old-school built-in vacuum systems, where you would sweep the floor into a specific corner and turn on what was like a vent. She thought I was going on dates for the money. I didn't see a future for us. I was just young and wanted what young men want. But I guess I was kind of in awe of what a few $1 million can buy compared to the house under $100,000 I grew up in. Story 81. My friend had a batting cage in his backyard and a complete arcade in his house, including Daytona, United States of America, which was one of my favorites growing up. Story 82. Nothing in particular, just that everything was always brand new. Cars in the driveway, no more than a year and a half old. Appliances, brand new. Electronics, brand new. Always. Story 83. In my case, it would be cousins, dirt bikes, pools, trampolines, and all the toys I wanted but knew my parents could not afford. Story 84. A huge butler's pantry. It was bigger than my bedroom. Pots and pans were out of sight. The amount of snacks was incredible. They had other luxurious items, but that was impressive. Story 85. One of my friends got a brand new car when he got his driver's license. They were not extremely wealthy, but they were much wealthier than the rest of our group. Most of us were lucky to get an old, unreliable car if we even had a car at all. Story 86. 2 bedrooms and her own credit card when she was 14 or 15. She went to the mall once, and instead of the normal window shopping at clothing stores or browsing book and record stores, she went into many of the more boutique stores and tried on clothes that cost my annual school budget. At one point, I said something about not having enough money for a book I wanted, and she was like, "Why don't you just use your credit card?" Story 87. My friends growing up were all solidly middle class. My cousins, however, were definitely considered rich, at least by my standards. They had all the cool toys, video game consoles, airsoft guns, paintball guns, dirt bikes, all that kind of stuff. But I realized they didn't have parents who really took the time to parent them properly. Their parents thought that buying things for their children was being good parents, and it wasn't until they reached adulthood that they started to realize what they had missed out on and began to have issues. Story 88. I have a friend whose parents bought him everything, cars, houses, you name it. He got it all and did not care. Story 89. A bodyguard. Apparently, they had enough money that he was considered at risk of being kidnapped for ransom, so he was dropped off and picked up from our private Catholic school by a bodyguard. Story 90. A refrigerator in their movie theater stocked with ice-cold sodas of all kinds. A movie theater in the basement. An open pantry with a variety of snacks. Multiple gaming consoles. We simply did not have those kinds of amenities. Story 91. Just the constant vacationing. Aruba, Mexico, Jamaica, and so on. They went on 2 vacations, a summer plus spring break, it seemed. With 5 children, that family is very well off. I love them though. They have been nothing but good to me. Story 92. A finished basement with a game room containing a pool table, dartboard, and bar. It was not very fancy, but just having all that was amazing to me. Story 93. How tall their Christmas tree was. I went home and told my parents their Christmas tree was taller than our house. Story 94. Garage refrigerator for beer. Outdoor sink, refrigerator, and barbecue with flat top and warming trays. Brick pizza oven. Dirt bikes. Recreational vehicle that was the size of my house. Story 95. The parents were definitely more physically affectionate around us than they probably should have been. They had a couple of friends who always came over too. The man was big, muscular, and always shirtless, and the woman had clearly undergone cosmetic procedures. They were always a bit physically affectionate with each other as well. Nothing outright sexual, but enough for even 12-year-old me to guess they were swingers. My friend was the only one with a PlayStation 3, and I wanted to play the gamescape. Story 96. An extremely clean house. Our house was very clean growing up, but we worked very hard with my parents to keep it that way. I had a friend with a house at least twice as big with 2 people living in it, a single mother and her son, and it was immaculate. They had a cleaning service twice a week. Story 97. Not a friend, but I went to a high school New Year's party at a really rich kid's house once. Not my scene, but he paid my band $100 to play there. He had a secret door behind a bookshelf that led to a giant ball pit. You pulled the bookshelf and it swung open to a spiral staircase that led to a Chuck E. Cheese ball pit only twice the size. Thanks a bunch for sticking around till the end of the video. Remember to subscribe, and until next time, stay awesome and goodbye.